So this is a very tragic story, man, and this is something that I've talked about again and again in videos. Every single time I see people, get confronted with thieves putting guns to their head, just showing them guns in their waistbands, whatever it might be. When they give them the stuff, they walk away alive. They might lose the stuff, but they got their life. Almost every time I see people put up a fight, start blowing at them, refuse to give them the stuff, they end up dead. Like usually it's the person with the stuff that ends up dead, man. And that stuff is not worth your life. This stuff is all replaceable. As long as you got a life, you can make a dollar, but that all that money cannot make a life. So in this video, we got a story about a young Polish guy. He was 25 years old. He had just come to the U.S. from Poland about 7 years ago, and he had come to live in Chicago. He was some type of electrical technician, and he was heading to work. Okay, now he had come here. He had started coming here like in the summers, visiting his aunt. He was carjacked, or an attempted carjacking, by two guys, and they were trying to take a car that he really loved. Okay, well, he refused to do it. Okay, so the story goes, this guy's name was Michael Siskal. He spent every Sunday playing video games with his little brother from halfway across the world. They said since he was a little boy, he was full of energy. This is according to his aunt. And what's crazy about this incident, he was shot and killed right on his 25th birthday on Sunday morning. This is in Fuller Park on the south side. And according to his loved ones, he was a friend to everyone who would do anything for his family back in Poland. So his aunt said that her nephew had spent the last few weeks before the attack preparing for his parents and their 10-year-old brother who were going to come that Saturday. He hadn't seen them in almost 3 years. So Poland is one of those countries that's continued to send immigrants over here from Europe. The Western Europeans, they had their big wave of immigration back in like the early part of the 20th century, 1800s. From Eastern Europe, there were immigrants coming back then, but even today there's still big waves of immigrants coming from Poland, Ukraine, countries like that, man. So, guys like this, they're pretty common in Chicago. And the Polish people, they have like some entire areas of the northwest side. Them and the Mexicans are probably the two deepest on the north and northwest side. But he was in an area where he probably, should not have been stopping if he could avoid it. Okay, because he was over by 55th and Wells. Okay, so anyways, he had already scheduled a helicopter ride to show his family Chicago from the sky, and he'd rented a house to take them on a short trip to Michigan during their visit. He was an electromechanical technician. He was on his way to work over at U of C, the University of Chicago. Now, this university that I've told you guys a million times, it's one of the top universities in the country, okay, as far as prestige. And it's in Hyde Park, and it's, the area around there is wealthy. But guys, it's totally surrounded by gang territories and just high crime area. And matter of fact, I would say that Hyde Park is probably a high crime area too. It's like an island of wealth surrounded by a sea of poverty. And it's, the crime from the surrounding neighborhoods spills into Hyde Park. And even some residents in Hyde Park are on that. So I would not characterize Hyde Park as a safe area, despite the fact that the income level is relatively high, and the fact that it's one of the hardest areas, to make it into as far as economically in the city of Chicago. And, aesthetically, it's beautiful, especially around UFC, but it's still a high crime area. But when people demand the stuff, you gotta give it to them, man. Don't try to act tough or anything like that. But anyways, there's video surveillance of this incident. So he stopped for gas over at the Shell gas station over by 55th and Wells about 7:55 a.m. on Sunday. Okay, now this is a time typically when you wouldn't expect a lot of crime, but in Chicago, it's going down 24/7. Video surveillance shows two armed men getting out of a stolen gray BMW after pulling up in front of Michael at a pump. Now, after appearing to demand his car keys, one of the assailants shoots Michael in the chest at close range, while the other wrenched the keys away from his hand after he collapsed. Okay, so we don't actually know if he refused to give him the keys, but it appears that way on the video. Okay, the assailant with the keys tried to drive Michael's car away, but he couldn't do it because it was a manual transmission, which he couldn't drive. Okay, so this is just a messed up situation all the way around, man. He couldn't even take the car it was a stick shift. So the attackers sped away in their own car, which police said had been stolen in a carjacking earlier the same morning. And for his friend, refusing to hand over his keys was a characteristic move for Michael, who spent much of his time with cars, and he had met his friend at a car meetup event about 6 or 7 years ago. So the Polish, like the Mexicans, they're really into cars. Uh, they love their cars, man, and they always, trick the cars out as much as they can. They're all good at working on cars, and so you can try to take their car. It's like something that they, in most cases, spent a lot of time on. Not to mention a lot of money. His friend was saying that it was honorable, and it's something that would be respected in Polish culture, refusing to hand over his keys. Now, I disagree. I know a lot of Polish people, and I'm not Polish, but I'm Eastern European myself from, a culture that's kind of similar. That's just suicide. Like suicide is not, there's a fine line between being brave and just like throwing your life away for nothing. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what this was, man. If in fact he refused to hand over the keys, which it appears from the video that he did. His friend said Michael was a light of any situation, just in the garage working on things, whatever it was. Even if it was something little, he'd be in there helping you out. So his car was a brand new BMW that he had just purchased back in March. And his aunt said he really liked that car. He first visited Chicago when he was 14, when he came to stay with his aunt for a month over the summer. And he continued to visit every year until he turned 17 and decided to stay. He lived with her for a year, and when he turned 18, he decided to move out and get his own place. He was never very interested in school, but he was a hard worker, he said, and always wanted the best for his family. So he had a standing appointment to play video games with his brother every Sunday and buying him a new game console. So not a cheap one, but Michael didn't care about cost. He just wanted the best for his little brother. So he was hoping that he could help his little brother out if he decided to move to the U.S. He said, those nights where you're sharing a beer together and talking and saying what you really want in life? He said that was his dream. If he decides he wants to come to America, I'm going to give him everything I can to make his life easier. He always said that about his brother. So his aunt said that she was shocked to find out how many friends her nephew had made and was grateful for their support. He said, he was loved by everybody. I am overwhelmed by the support that I'm getting from his friends. For someone who had only been in the country for 7 years, he made so many friends. So one of his friends said that he and Michael grew close through working on cars together and going fishing over in St. Charles and Wooddale, despite Michael not being much of a fisher. He said he wasn't the biggest fisherman, but whatever people were around and whatever interested people, he was always down. So without Michael around, his friend now finds himself still expecting him to come through their door in Des Plaines. He said it comes in waves. From time to time, it becomes really real. And other times, I'm just expecting him to come home at any minute. So these are the people you got to think about before you, act tough and throw your life away for nothing. I hate to sound disrespectful, but this is important for people to hear, because in Chicago, there's a high possibility you're going to be in this situation at some point, being robbed. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to pretty much everybody I know. We're talking about stuff. Your life is way more important, man. His aunt says it's been very difficult. We are still in denial. There are moments that I can't hold it together. So friends and relatives are raising money for funeral expenses and for his family back in Poland. A GoFundMe account was raised more than $6,000, which his friend says will go back to his parents for a traditional Polish memorial. No arrests have been made. The carjackings, man, for people that don't know, they're treating these carjackings, the feds, they're treating these things like murders now, man. As far as time that you're getting. So just think about that. Dudes are getting 20 years, 25 years for jacking these cars. It's a very dangerous game. This is not a video game. This is real life. I'm talking about for the people doing it. So you guys let me know what you think, though, in the comment section, man. Rest in peace to Michael. Just give up the stuff, guys. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. It's your boy, Chicago News. I'm out.